Welcome back to another episode of A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci. I'm excited to launch another episode for you all. I'm Vincent Lanci, speaker and author of the book Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption. When I was 21 years old, I was the victim of a hit-and-run accident while walking home from a friend's birthday. After coming out of a coma and suffering from a traumatic brain injury, or you may know of as a TBI, I soon realized that it was time to put my mental health on a very high pedestal. This transformative experience has led me to create a podcast that is all things mental health. Would it benefit you to hear from mental health professionals and influencers? Would it also add value to your life to hear real life and authentic stories from people talking about their mental health, the issues they face, and how they actively combat them? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you came to the right place. I want to start by congratulating you for making your mental health a priority. If you missed the last episode, be sure to download it after you tune in today. On this episode, I am happy to introduce my guest, Evan Pulliam. I had the opportunity to connect with an old friend from college when I launched this platform. I learned that he has a great passion for giving back through sharing his mental health related stories to add his personal perspective. Allow me to introduce my first guest from Alaska, Evan Pulliam. Evan, thank you for coming on my show.
Oh, great to be here, Vinny. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Would you mind please introducing yourself to our listeners who don't know you and share part of your story before we dive in and get going? Also, please share your role relating to mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Evan Pulliam, human being and feeling feeler. I'm a writer. I'm a seller. I'm currently took on a new job selling PPE to frontline medical healthcare workers. I think it's a pivot from what I've been doing the rest of my life, but it's great to be on a positive path right now.
Absolutely. Evan, what brings you on the show today?
I jumped at the opportunity. I've had plenty of mental health struggles in my own life, and when I can connect with a friend and sort of bring some of that to life in a good form that isn't just me yelling at a cloud like an old man, I'm happy to be a part of it. This is it's a healthy outlet, and I'm just stoked to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you on the show, and thank you for sharing that, Evan. On each episode, what I do is I share a mental health story of someone who is famous because I want to let you, the listeners, know you are not alone. I want you to understand that even though someone looks like they are healthy from the outside, they may not be on the inside too. For today's episode, I will introduce the mental health related story of the late Robin Williams from an article I found over in Psych Central. This example, today's story, it's meant to open your eyes and check on your friends and families that seem the most happy, cheerful, and always smiling, because that's just what comedian and actor Robin Williams was. He committed suicide after suspected suffering of bipolar disorder and depression and addiction for quite some time. The article describes bipolar disorder as a, quote, mental illness where the person fluctuates between episodes of extreme energy, focus, and productivity, or mania, and severe depression. It has been reported that Williams was in one of his episodes of depressions when he took his own life. The article also touched a bit more on suicide and bipolar disorder, so I wanted to share these facts with you all, where it said suicide is a choice that comes from the lies that depression tells us. When a person is suffering from severe depression, as Robin Williams apparently had, it can tell the person, hey, you'd be better off dead. Life isn't going to get any better. Now, bipolar disorder is a mental disorder that is normally treated through a combination of medication and psychotherapy. People who limit their treatment, which includes the stopping of taking meds, can also be at a higher risk for the symptoms associated with bipolar disorder, which also include mania and depression. Evan, what do you take away from the story about Robin Williams and these type of mental health disorders?
I mean, I gotta say, I remember vividly hearing about his passing, his suicide, and it struck me to my core. I mean, he was an actor that I'd been following since I was a child. I mean, some of my earliest fun memories of movies were in him playing Peter Pan,
Yep.
and then to sort of see that, in my perspective, the happiest guy on earth. I mean, if you've seen him perform, there is nothing short of his happiness. that comes through in waves, to realize that the happiest guy on earth might not have had a chance to get out of this, and it ended up taking his life, was a shock to me. I've always loved the idea of being laughed with, even if that means being laughed at a little bit, and it's really tough, when you're taking that position as the jester or the joker. So much of your life can revolve around the extreme highs of making people laugh, and when you're sort of stuck to your own accord, you're stuck in your own zone, there aren't people there to laugh about your depression. It's kind of you reflecting on it in a mirror, and so I can only imagine the hole that he could have been in, and the extreme lows that come with the extreme highs that even I got watching him. So it's a little scary, I would love I mean, it would be an honor for somebody to ever compare me to Robin Williams, and I
Right.
don't think that's what's happening here. But at the same time,
Hmm.
that would be amazing, to also realize that I might be compared to Robin Williams because of my struggle with depression. That's scary too. So talking about it and getting it out there, I think is one of the best parts of a healing process. And so, I mean, I'm just excited to be able to talk about it under the shadow of Robin Williams right now. That's kind of an honor.
And you have to think, because the conversation is the first step for everybody having conversations like this. We're breaking down barriers, we're spreading awareness, which is the most important. But in that era, the lack of mental health science and knowledge, there really wasn't, and there was definitely not much accepting, especially compared to how it is now, which there's still a lot of work to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the understanding of depression, the reasons behind it, are still very much unknown. I mean, we're chipping away at the block of stone to sort of carve out what the model for depression looks like, but it's an art as much as it is a science.
Absolutely. Well, Evan, let's get into the main event. On each episode, my guest and I go over this series of 6 questions, which only slightly varies depending on if the guest is speaking on their own or others' mental health. By doing this, it allows me to deliver as much value as possible to you, the listeners. You ready to go?
Oh man, I'm ready, Vinny. Let's hit it.
Let's do it. Well, many people would agree that the more common, or at least more talked about types of mental illnesses are mood disorders, anxiety disorders, or schizophrenia disorders. What areas did you go through the most?
I mean, I'm not necessarily a classified schizophrenic at this point, but give it time, and I'm sure that that'll come out in the woodwork. But I know that I definitely suffer from anxiety. Mood is a big part of my life, and so I guess the voices I'm hearing in my head that are helpful for writing, maybe that'll come out of schizophrenia someday. But I think that a lot of these are what I would consider diseases of the ego. My ego has been a big part of my life, whether it's been classified as a disease or not. I think feeding that ego has been important.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little more. When does this all start to come about? Was this later in your life, early?
I think my understanding of it and what it has been has come around later in life. I think that I'm lucky enough that I didn't actually take my own life, early on. I mean, I can remember a hunting trip with my father when I was 12, 13 years old. Classic crazy period for any teen male.
Right.
You're starting to notice girls, just there's all these hormones raging in your body and testosterone, and you see on TV these images of great men that have accomplished great things, and you already kind of think of yourself as trying to be one of those. But then you kind of realize that you definitely aren't. You're just a 12 or 13-year-old kid,
Right.
but you don't have that perspective at that age. So, I mean, at that point, I had thought that suicide was a good way out. I mean, I definitely was very close to having that gun right to my head, and then a turkey ran by, and we were out hunting turkeys, so I shot the turkey and felt one of the greatest highs that I had had in my young life. So it's always been a sort of high and low struggle for me, even since childhood. You know, I mean, yeah, it led to a lot of reading of like Chicken Soup for the Soul and that sort of a thing. But I don't really think that I was able to comprehend what was going on in my brain until now. I mean, I tried to study psychology in college to try and understand it a little bit. And what I found, even studying that, was that I I was more interested in using and sort of trying to feed my ego than I was trying to understand and cure my what I'll call an ego disease. I realized in a psychology class about we were talking about mind control, and I kind of decided, you know what, I don't really want to help patients with their problems like this. I want to go into advertising and almost take advantage of these things because these things exist out there.
Hmm.
It's only been in the last few years that I've sort of been able to be introspective about that and realize that, you know, maybe trying to prey on another's ego or another's need for the new shiny object, that I'm sort of I'm sort of hurting myself in a way. You know, in the creative field, ego is everything. I got to walk into a room and say my big idea is not only great, but it's the best idea that you can freaking have right now, and you need to buy it from me, and you need to buy it from my agency. And so that there's pressure on my shoulders to make
Hmm.
sure that my ideas kick ass and that people are really excited about them. But if I'm not excited about it, then I'm not really doing any good. The best idea without the energy behind it does nothing. And so I found that riding the highs and lows of that advertising space, that became my addiction, and it has been for at least the last 15 years.
Yeah, so it seems like you've done a lot of brainstorming over the, of late at least, kind of working with what you have going on mental health wise. Can you describe that moment when you first decided that a career relating to mental health, or taking a stance on mental health, I should say, was going to be the right path for you? When did you need to start sharing your story?
You know, let me see. I I guess I've been well. It started with Movember. Um, you know, it's the world's largest charity organization dedicated to men's health. And
Okay.
although it started with a bunch of guys in Australia growing mustaches and talking about prostate testicular cancer, it's grown. Those are two illnesses that men can deal with medically and almost pretty easily. I mean, those have great recovery rates for men if you catch it early.
Yeah.
Mental health is something that was added to the sort of Movember agenda a few years after they began, and that's really where I started feeling that I was a part of the Movember journey. I mean, yeah, I grow a sick mustache, but in a way, I think that is only a more ego fuel. You know, having people say like, "Hey, man, you know, why are you growing that mustache?" and me being able to talk about Movember has sort of been my inroad
Mm.
to discussing mental health because that's what afflicted me. I haven't had testicular prostate cancer, but I've met plenty of people that have. I have had, at least in my mind, mental illness. Now, is it declared and written out by a doctor that this is the actual problem that I have? I don't know. I'm not sure what my psychologist ever actually wrote on paper about.
Hmm.
But I know that I went and sought mental health, you know, practitioners to try and help me through my struggles. Um, and and I think that Movember was really sort of a jumping off point to that because it started the conversation. I realized other men were having these same struggles.
Well, I think you're doing a great service to everybody by getting outside of your comfort zone, sharing your story. But you've had a lot of experiences here, Evan, with mental illness at a young age and a little bit of an older age. For the people listening on, what advice can you give to them listening as what may be considered a potential early sign that they may be developing a form of mental illness?
You know, I think that the ego, the brain, the lies that our uncontrolled thoughts can tell us, those start so early. I think that anybody that would say that they don't have a mental illness probably hasn't analyzed themselves deep enough.
Right.
And that's not to say that, you know, you need to go get on pills because of your depression, because you're sad when you got fired from your job, but it might be, you know, having these triggers that cause you to be sad or be depressed, it's kind of an okay thing. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that you're human. To analyze yourself and to try and, find the little chinks in your own armor is not a sign of weakness, and admitting that you might have holes in your armor is, in my opinion, a sign of strength. I think that there's, probably some mixed feelings on that, but I know that analyzing my own self and sort of living in my own, I mean, I don't almost want to call them weaknesses, but those sort of holes in the armor has has allowed me to realize that, I might not need to be in a psychiatric ward, but that doesn't mean that I don't need psychiatric help at some point or another, or at least somebody to bounce ideas off of that has my best interest in mind, because my mind doesn't always have my best interests. Like,
Mhm.
they're not in there all the time. Like we said about Robin, there's there's this voice that can say death is a better answer, and that's pretty extreme. Considering all the other answers that are out there, that should be the last one. But it sometimes seems easier, and so I think that anybody should consider that anything they're going through might be a reason to sort of check their mental health. um, if you notice, like me, that you're riding on extreme highs and lows, or you consider your feelings on a roller coaster,
Mhm.
then it's something probably to consider.
I think you make a lot of great points right there, Evan. You know yourself better than anyone else does. If you feel yourself something's off, highs and lows, maybe it might be time to get checked. And another great point was, and it comes up on a lot of episodes, it's okay to be sad. It's normal to have a bad day. It's normal to cry. It's normal to do things. It just goes back to, like you said, you know yourself, you know your body, analyze yourself. But if you could pick three things that worked for you, Evan, and I say only three because I want the three most important things our listeners can do on a daily or short term basis to improve their overall mental health, what advice do you have for them?
I had to think about this one for a while because there are so many things.
So many.
But I, for me, I say laugh, cry, and eat a salad. And I mean, I can go into a little more detail on those
Yeah,
because I
please.
think that there's more to it. It's
Yeah.
not as simple as like waking up, laughing to yourself, shedding a few tears, eating a salad, and getting going. But putting yourself in situations where you can try to laugh, seeking out things that make you happy and smile, are important. But it's not everything. The highs are not everything. You can't live on that high forever.
Mhm.
um, and that's not to say that you can't be happy. It's to say that, okay, you're every once in a while the roller coaster hits a bump, and even on the top of the mountain something can happen. And if you don't live in the cry moment as well, then you're not letting that out. I think I mean, I'd have to find a quote on this and find the article specifically, but I read that the tears have been studied to a point that different different emotions that cause tears to come from your eyeballs have, when they studied them, have different chemical components to them. Sadness, the tear has a different component to it than a happy tear. A
Interesting.
depressed tear, or one that's coming from fear, has a different chemical component to it than another.
I believe
And
it.
so that is, it's a release. Our body is trying to get whatever that hormone or whatever that feeling is out, and to hold it in. uh, I'm not saying that you got to walk around crying everywhere either, but it's healthy to let that out, and to not feel that emotion just draws it out longer. I know specifically that when we'd started talking about this podcast, I just had to put my dog down.
I remember
I
that now. Yes. Yes.
it took me, oh man, it was a week of soaked shirts and just, I mean, feeling this gut reaction that, I mean, it even gets me going now.
Yep.
But letting that out, that those feelings in your mind and in your body are the result of chemicals that your brain can release. Those thoughts come from a chemical that your brain is releasing, and understanding why you're feeling it is as important as letting it out. So laugh and cry and then eat a salad, dude. It's so good for the body. I mean, spinach is a wonderful superfood, and a salad is so much healthier than the McDonald's cheeseburger that I'm probably going to end up eating late at night. But you know, you need to try and be healthy in whatever way you're able to. And if a small step is going to Kroger and buying a bag of salad that you like, and just, I mean, you don't even have to cut up fresh vegetables. Just do something that's healthier for yourself, like eating a salad, than all of the other choices you're going to make that day. And I think that if you're able to do those three things, you're proving to yourself that you're human and that you want to take care of yourself.
You would agree that your mental health is as important or probably more important than your physical health.
You know, I think so. There's plenty of people out there that would say that, you know, a healthy body is the key to a healthy mind. And I think it's vice versa as well. You know, a healthy mind, thinking positive thoughts, saying positive words to yourself, and trying to make positive, healthy decisions. Your mind has to tell your body what to do, but your body will influence the chemicals that your mind wants to create. So it's incredibly important to try and be healthy. And I say that having gained at least 10 pounds during this pandemic,
Hmm.
but that's a position on. I've been trying to focus on the mental health more than I have the physical health. Being in sort of a quarantine it can wreak havoc on the unhealthy mind, because you're only stuck with your own thoughts. So I think that my biggest goal right now is to sort of capture those feelings, and work towards a healthier end with my body as well.
Well, you hit it on the head for all these short-term initiatives here, Evan. Let's delve a little deeper here. What are two longer-term commitments our listeners can make to create an overall healthier mindset, a healthier, positive headspace?
You know, it's as hard as it is to believe these things and to actually act on them. I think that or the first thing you can do is recognize and commit yourself to future you. I try and think. I mean, I'm not the first person to say this. I probably took it from a Reddit post somewhere, but the concept of there's a future you, there's you right now, and there's past you. You can blame past you for a lot of mistakes, or you can forgive past you for mistakes that you've made. You can make a commitment to future you that present you will make better decisions. You know, if you've got a 5-year plan, put that out there. That's future you. You living in a bigger house, you living in a smaller house, you living in a van, whatever that future you want to be. Imagine that person is real. That's one of your friends that you have a chance to meet in 5 years if you just honor them. And for past you, that would be the second thing, is forgive yourself. You know, you've made mistakes. You've been different than you want to be. That's okay. Again, it makes you human, but holding on to it and being angry at your past self, it doesn't help you that much. You need to be putting that energy towards the decisions you can make today to commit to that future person so that you can meet them in 5 years and be like, yo, this is our house. This is what we were talking about. Or, yo, this is my car. This is what we meant to get. But it really takes that sort of appreciation that you're in 3 states, and you can feed your healthy, positive commitment to yourself, and you can forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made in the past.
I think that's an extremely important lesson you're teaching everybody listening on. You can't move forward until you get rid of what's holding you back in the past. Got to keep that positive mental headspace. And I think everything you've provided in this episode so far will help everybody do just that. But Evan, to wrap up today's show, what are some ways you plan on raising awareness for the importance of mental health in the future? What are we working on?
You know, I mentioned it already. I think the Movember charity is a great, easy way to get into the conversation.
Let's talk about it a
Um,
little more. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Movember.com every year on November 1st, or October 31st, they encourage men to shave their faces completely and grow only a mustache for 1 month. Now, they have a lot of data behind why you should shave your entire face, and grow a mustache. And most of it is around the fact that people will look at you and say, "What the hell are you doing? Like, what's going on your mustache? Why are you growing this little piddly thing?" And the point is that it starts a conversation. That's the inroad. It gets somebody to question what's going on, and that allows you to say, "Hey, I'm doing this for prostate health. I'm doing this for testicular cancer, or you know what? I'm doing this for mental health because there are too many men that are suffering silently, that just they don't believe that having a weakness in your armor makes them human. They feel like it makes them a sissy,
Yeah.
and you know what? If that's what makes me a sissy, come at me, bro. It's really not. It's an admission of something that you can work on, something that you can make stronger. And even the toughest among us have little issues. Even the happiest among us have chinks in our mental armor. And appreciating them is important. Talking about them is even more important. And getting the story out to other men who are lost or are struggling, it's the best way that you can get a release and they can feel not alone. And so I think that the Movember charity does a great job of that. I support them year round. I've been wearing one of their Movember changing the world bracelets for at least a decade, because it's something that reminds me that I'm not alone, that there are other people out there, and that doing something a little bit weird, like growing a mustache when you're not typically having one, or shaving your entire beard off and growing just one little bit of facial hair, it it's something that, it's going to grow back. But the person that's struggling, they might not be there next week if they didn't hear a story that was putting somebody in similar shoes. And if one of if even one more person is dying from mental health related illnesses, it's it's a hurt to all mankind. Losing any of our brothers, our fathers, our uncles, our sons is not easy, and being able to add strength to them it's really easy. I mean, I know that this might not seem like an easy conversation for people, but letting it out is way easier than holding it in. And it doesn't have to be the leading thing that you're always talking about, but it needs to be a part of your conversation somewhere, even if it's, I mean, hell, even if it's just with a stranger over the phone. It's an easy way to just get that release and sort of unburden your soul.
Evan, thanks again for everything you provided on this episode. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I know our listeners are going to see all the value in your episode today. I personally liked how you spoke from the heart right from the beginning. When it came to letting yourself go, your past go to move forward, I liked how you emphasized that. And I really liked how you emphasized having a conversation. I think that's super, super important. But it's time for the last word here, Evan. I do this on my other podcast series, What's It Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur, too, because I want our listeners to really get to know my guests. Is there something that you would like to share with everybody listening on that we did not get to touch on today?
Um, you know, I I noticed last night, about your entrepreneur podcast as well, and of course, the second I think about it, something pops up in my Facebook feed that touches on it. I still don't know how they managed to figure that out,
Yeah, I get lost on
but
that every day. It happens every time.
the entrepreneurs out there are are doing so much and putting so much on their shoulders that I just think that it's an amazing crossover to be talking about mental health and being an entrepreneur, because they're, if anything, these leaders that want to show strength at all times because business demands it. Business, it's not human, but it needs to have humans running it. And so business needs to be strong for people to believe in that business. And so the humans that are running those businesses need to project this strength at all times. And it's rough. I can only imagine what so many of these guys are going through. That I mean, I read about the guy that started Diaspora killed himself at the age of like 22 or something like that. 22. My
Yeah,
goodness, there is still so much life out there.
so much.
And
Yes.
and I mean, I don't want to say that every year has always been better, but I've learned so much and been able to deal with so much more that, if I had clocked out at 12 on a hunting trip with my dad, I would have missed so much. And that doesn't mean that it always got better. I'm still in the struggle today, but there's better things out there and there's hope. I don't know that I have a whole lot of it, but I know that I've heard people talk about it plenty. And so I'm trying to find myself some of that hope, and that, you know, being human is okay. So be human and appreciate your humanness. Even if you need to be strong for business sense, it's okay to come home and not be strong.
Evan, I think there's enough hope in you just being on the show, using your voice, your experiences, your stories to help other people battling some similar adversity. I think is plenty of hope. Would you mind sharing any ways for our listeners to connect with you, perhaps a website or social media, any business endeavors?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm available on Instagram at Hey Mr. Bowtie. And I've just sort of taken a pivot in my professional life. So if you're looking for any of those PPE supplies, you're trying to get some gear to those frontline medical workers, feel free to give me a call. I've got the easiest phone number in Tampa Bay. It's 813-777-6666, and I'm available.
I appreciate you generosity and sharing all that. Be sure to get at him if you need any PPE gear, to connect with him on a mental health topic. But it's social media time for the shows, and we're on whatever platform you like to use. We're at a mental health break on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and on Twitter, we're at Podcast by Lanci to give you updates from both shows. Of course, my handles are at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media and YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. If you check out my books, DM me. I want to hear what you think. We have Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, and How to Transform Your Mindset When the Norm is Changed, which I created for all of you during the quarantine. Both on Amazon. Let me know if you like them. If you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening and rate A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci 5 stars. I work hard to find value delivering guests for you on each episode, and thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode of A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci.